This seat isn't for you. Get out now." The flight attendant's voice cut through the quiet hum of the first-class cabin, sharp and cold as ice. 8-year-old Olivia Walker shrank back, clutching her valid boarding pass, for seat 2A, tears streaming down her face. Why was this happening? Nearby, Eleanor Vance, the woman who demanded the seat, merely smiled, a picture of smug entitlement. Around them, other passengers shifted uncomfortably, suddenly fascinated by their shoes or the overhead bins. No one met Olivia's desperate, searching eyes. No one spoke up. The fluorescent lights of Hartsfield-Jackson, Atlanta International Airport hummed a tune of perpetual motion, reflecting off the polished floors where countless journeys began and ended. Amidst the controlled chaos of rolling suitcases and echoing announcements, 8-year-old Olivia Walker sat perched on a slightly too tall chair near gate C-3204, utterly absorbed. Her small fingers traced the lines on the cover of her book. Hidden Figures. The young reader's edition she was determined to finish for the 3rd time before landing in Chicago. Her braids tied neatly with bright purple ribbons, her favorite color, framed a face alive with intelligence and a quiet observation that seemed beyond her years. Today, Olivia was an unaccompanied minor, a title that sounded both important and slightly lonely. She was flying solo to visit her father, David Walker. Most people who saw her father in newspapers or on television knew him as the sharp-suited CEO of Skyline Airways, a man who had navigated the turbulent skies of the corporate world with legendary calm. But to Olivia, he was just Dad, the man who taught her chess, quizzed her on constellations, and most importantly, instilled in her a sense of unshakable self-worth. Her phone buzzed softly in her pocket. It was him, "Hey, Butterfly." His warm voice filled her ear, a familiar anchor in the bustling terminal. "Everything okay at the gate?" Olivia smiled. "Yes, Dad. Just reading." "Mrs. Henderson at check-in was nice." Good. A brief pause, then his tone shifted slightly, the CEO momentarily giving way to the concerned father. "Remember what we talked about. Stand tall, be polite, but don't let anyone make you feel small. Your dignity is non-negotiable." He sighed lightly. "I know some folks might look twice. That's why I want you to see the world as it is, sweetheart, not just from the top floor. Only then can you understand the true value of kindness, and your own place in it, I know." Dad Olivia replied, clutching her book a little tighter. "Don't worry, I'll be brave. You always are," he said, warmth flooding back into his voice. "Now go have an adventure. I'll be waiting on the other side. Love you. Love you too, Dad." Ending the call. Olivia felt a familiar mix of excitement and a tiny knot of apprehension. Her father could have arranged a private jet, or at least a personal escort navigating every step. But he insisted she travel like this, with the standard UM assistance, but no fanfare. Humility, he always said, is the luggage that never weighs you down. With her boarding documents clutched firmly in hand, first-class seat 2A, a detail she knew by heart, Olivia followed the signs for the Skyline Airways VIP lounge. Her UM package included lounge access, a small luxury her father had conceded was acceptable. The heavy glass doors slid open, revealing a hushed world of plush leather armchairs, gleaming chrome, and the low murmur of business deals being struck over complimentary cappuccinos. It felt like stepping onto a different planet. Olivia approached the imposing marble reception desk, standing on her tiptoes slightly, to make eye contact with the attendant. The woman whose name tag read, Susan, wore a crisp uniform, an impeccably coiffed bun, and an expression that suggested she'd just detected an unpleasant smell. "Excuse me," Olivia said politely, sliding her folder across the cool marble. I'm Olivia Walker, traveling as an unaccompanied minor to Chicago. My ticket includes lounge access. Susan looked down at the documents, then at Olivia, then back at the documents, as if expecting them to spontaneously combust. Her perfectly plucked eyebrows arched towards her hairline. Are you quite sure you're in the right place? Dear. The dear dripped with the kind of sweetness that could curdle milk. The general waiting area is back down the concourse. Much more suitable, perhaps. Olivia held her ground, pointing calmly to the relevant line item. It says right here, UM assistance includes lounge access. Susan picked up the folder, holding it gingerly by the corners. Her manicured nails tapped a staccato rhythm on the marble. She murmured, squinting at the printed text, as if deciphering ancient hieroglyphs. She held the first-class ticket up to the light, perhaps checking for invisible ink or secret watermarks only visible to seasoned doubters. Just one moment. She picked up the desk phone, turning slightly away, though her voice carried clearly in the quiet room. Yes, security Susan at the VIP lounge. I have a situation. A young girl. Yes, quite young. Claims lounge access. First-class ticket, apparently. A pause. Yes, unaccompanied. Yes, she's black. Another pause longer this time. I know that's what I thought, too. Highly irregular. Can you verify passenger Walker? Olivia, flight 2275. Across the lounge, heads turned. A man in a bespoke suit lowered his financial newspaper, staring openly over the rim of his glasses. A woman whispered something to her companion, cupping her hand over her mouth, though her disapproving glance towards Olivia was perfectly clear. Olivia felt her cheeks burn. She focused intently on a spot on the carpet, pretending deep fascination with its intricate pattern, while her heart hammered against her ribs. Dignity, she thought, picturing her father's calm face, non-negotiable. Her hand resting on her lap trembled almost imperceptibly, after what felt like an eternity, punctuated by Susan's hushed but clearly skeptical responses into the phone. Are you positive? Really? The CEO's directive? She finally hung up. She regarded Olivia with a new expression, not warmth, but a sort of baffled resignation. Well, Susan sighed the sound like air escaping a punctured tire. It appears your documents are in order. For now, she gestured vaguely towards a single small armchair, tucked away in the furthest, darkest corner, near a perpetually swinging service door. You can wait over there, and please try not to disturb the other guests. Olivia nodded mutely, her throat tight. She walked towards the isolated chair, feeling the weight of unseen eyes following her every step. It was the VIP lounge, a place of privilege, yet she had never felt more like an unwelcome intruder. She sank into the chair, opened Hidden Figures, and forced herself to read the words blurring slightly as she fought back the sting of exclusion. Her journey had only just begun. The sterile quiet of the VIP lounge eventually gave way to the boarding announcement for Flight 22275 to Chicago. Olivia gathered her small backpack and her precious copy of Hidden Figures, smoothing down her dress as she stood. She offered a polite, if slightly stiff, nod to Susan at the reception desk on her way out. Susan merely sniffed, turning back to her computer screen as if Olivia had already dematerialized. Walking down the jet bridge felt like crossing a threshold. The air hummed differently here, charged with the anticipation of departure. Olivia clutched her boarding pass, the crisp paper a talisman against the lingering chill of Susan's disapproval. At the aircraft door, a flight attendant greeted passengers with a wide, practiced smile. Her name tag read, "Jessica Welcome aboard Skyline Airways." Jessica chirped, her smile reaching maximum wattage until her eyes landed on Olivia, then flickered down to the first class, printed boldly on the boarding pass. The wattage dimmed perceptibly. Oh, Jessica said, her professional enthusiasm faltering for a microsecond. Seat 2A, right this way. Dear. The dear felt different from Susan's. Less actively hostile, more reflexively condescending. Olivia murmured a thank you and stepped into the hushed sanctuary of the first-class cabin. Wide cream-colored leather seats awaited in spacious pods, a stark contrast to the utilitarian rows visible further back. She quickly located 2A, a window seat, just as her father had booked. Carefully she stowed her backpack under the seat in front, arranged her book and a small sketchbook on the polished side table, and clicked her seatbelt securely. Follow the rules, her father's voice echoed in her mind. Always. As other first-class passengers boarded, Olivia felt the familiar prickle of being observed. A woman adjusting her silk scarf did a subtle double-take. The balding man who'd been frowning in the lounge settled into seat 1C, directly across the aisle, and let out an audible sigh, pointedly looking away from Olivia towards the front galley. Olivia pretended to be deeply engrossed in buckling her seatbelt again, even though it was already secure. Her ears felt hot. Why did being small and brown in a fancy seat make people act so weird? The low hum of conversation paused as Eleanor Vance made her entrance, followed by her husband, Richard. Eleanor surveyed the cabin like a monarch inspecting her domain, dressed in an immaculate cream pantsuit that probably cost more than Olivia's entire wardrobe. Richard trailed behind, utterly absorbed in his phone, occasionally bumping gently into his wife's expensive handbag without seeming to notice. Eleanor's gaze swept across the seats, landing finally on Olivia. She froze mid-stride, her perfectly drawn lips parting slightly. The look on her face wasn't just surprise. It was a profound, almost offended disbelief, as though she'd discovered a squirrel attempting to use her personal silverware. "Richard," she hissed, her voice, a stage whisper, easily carrying to the surrounding seats. "Richard, look at that. Why on earth is that child sitting in first class?" Richard glanced up from his phone for precisely 1 second, his eyes unfocused. Oh, markets volatile. Today, dare. B-Tech dropped another point. He immediately returned his attention to the glowing screen, utterly oblivious to the social drama unfolding beside him. Eleanor ignored him, planting herself firmly in the aisle, causing a minor logjam of boarding passengers behind her. "This is precisely why we should fly private," she announced to the air, or perhaps to Richard's unhearing ears. "Standards have simply evaporated." She turned back to Olivia, her eyes narrowing, and she added indignation rising in her voice. "I specifically requested Seat 2A. It has the absolute best angle for capturing the city skyline during takeoff for my Instagram followers. It's crucial for my brand." She fumbled in her purse, extracting her own ticket holder. A quick glance confirmed her assigned seat, 4C. A frown creased her smooth forehead. 4C? Unacceptable. Not after the absolutely disastrous week I've had. She thought fleetingly of the failed merger, the smug look on her competitor's face. No, she deserved this small victory. This seat. It was hers by right of wanting it very badly. Nearby in seat 3B, Mrs. Evelyn Hayes, a woman whose elegant silver dreadlocks and calm, intelligent eyes missed nothing, watched the scene unfold. She recognized the entitled posture, the casual dismissal, the underlying current of prejudice. With the practiced discretion of someone who had witnessed far too much injustice in her 70 years, she subtly angled her phone on her lap, ensuring the camera had a clear view, and pressed record. Eleanor, meanwhile, had formulated a plan. Leaving Richard to his digital world, she glided towards the front galley, where Jessica was arranging miniature champagne bottles. "Excuse me," Eleanor began, leaning in, conspiratorially, her voice dropping to a confidential murmur. "There seems to be a slight irregularity with the seating." Jessica turned her customer service smile, snapping back into place. "How can I help you, Mrs. Vance?" Eleanor supplied, smoothly. Her eyes darted towards Olivia, then back to Jessica. "That little girl in 2A. I'm quite certain there's been a mistake. She looks rather lost. Perhaps wandered up from economy." Jessica hesitated, glancing towards Olivia, who was now pointedly staring out the window. "Well, ma'am, she did present a valid first-class boarding pass for 2A. Eleanor didn't miss a beat." Her hand slipped into her designer handbag and emerged holding something folded small and green, with the smooth, almost imperceptible motion of someone accustomed to lubricating the wheels of convenience. She pressed the folded $200 bill into Jessica's hand during a handshake that looked entirely innocent to a casual observer. "I've had such a trying few days." Eleanor purred, her voice laced with manufactured vulnerability. "And my husband's company, Vance Industries, they're one of your airline's largest corporate accounts. You know." Surely her eyes locked with Jessica's. A small seating adjustment can be made for a valued customer. The money vanished into Jessica's apron pocket with the speed of a startled lizard. Any flicker of doubt in Jessica's eyes was extinguished, replaced by a dawning realization. $200. That was more than half her take-home pay for this trip. Maybe rent wouldn't be late this month. Her posture straightened her allegiance instantly. If silently transferred, "I completely understand. Mrs. Vance." Jessica said, her voice now crisp and decisive. "Thank you for bringing this discrepancy to my attention. Please allow me to look into this right away. I'm sure we can sort out the proper seating for everyone involved." Eleanor bestowed a gracious, knowing smile upon her. "Thank you, dear. I knew Skyline valued its best customers." She turned, gliding back towards the main cabin. The first battle won. The air in first class suddenly felt colder. The fragile truce in the first-class cabin shattered as Jessica approached Olivia's seat once more, this time with reinforcements. Young Kevin. The other flight attendant trailed in her wake, looking pale and distinctly uncomfortable, like a student called to the principal's office, who wasn't entirely sure why, but knew it couldn't be good. Jessica plastered on a smile that felt several degrees too bright. "Olivia, sweetie," she began, her voice oozing a syrupy concern that didn't quite reach her eyes. "So sorry to bother you again, but our computer system is being terribly temperamental today, just throwing up all sorts of funny errors. Could we just triple-check that boarding pass one last time for good measure?" She held out her hand expectantly. Olivia felt a cold dread seep into her stomach. She looked from Jessica's fixed smile to Kevin's nervously shifting feet. Her hand trembled as she reached into her small side pocket and produced the slightly crumpled boarding pass. Here she said, her voice barely a whisper, though she tried to keep it steady, "Sit 2A." Jessica took the pass and made a great show of scrutinizing it, tilting it this way and that under the cabin lights. Kevin leaned in beside her, frowning with exaggerated concentration. "Oh dear, Jessica," murmured loud enough for the surrounding passengers to hear clearly. "This is peculiar. Kevin, look here. The system seems to indicate this seat is unassigned." Kevin peered at the pass, then glanced nervously at Jessica, then back at the pass. Yeah," he stammered, clearly out of his depth. That's strange. It definitely says 2A, but the screen..." Before he could finish his floundering sentence, Eleanor Vance interjected from across the aisle, her voice sharp with impatience and disdain. "Oh, for heaven's sake, isn't it obvious?" The child probably found the boarding pass somewhere, or maybe it's a printing error from the check-in desk. Happens all the time with their outdated equipment. She waved a dismissive hand. Either way, she clearly doesn't belong here. "Can we please just resolve this? We're already delayed." The man in 1C nodded vigorously. "Exactly. I paid a premium for this cabin, not for disruptions. Some parents just have no consideration, these days sending their children up here unaccompanied." A ripple of agreement went through the nearby seats. Heads nodded. Murmurs of "quite right" and "unbelievable" could be heard. Olivia saw a woman seated a few rows back open her mouth, perhaps to say something, but her husband placed a restraining hand on her arm and gave a slight shake of his head. The woman subsided her expression, troubled but silent. The collective judgment of the cabin pressed down on Olivia, heavy and suffocating. Tears pricked the back of Olivia's eyes, blurring the image of Jessica's expectant face. She felt small, exposed, and utterly alone. "Dignity," a small voice, her father's voice, whispered in her mind. "Non-negotiable." She took a shaky breath, lifting her chin slightly. My father paid for this seat," she said, her voice trembling but audible. "I have all the correct paperwork. I have the right to be here. I don't want to move." It was the wrong thing to say. Jessica's saccharine facade evaporated instantly, replaced by a mask of cold annoyance. Her patience, already thin, snapped. "Listen, young lady," she said, her voice dropping the sweetie and gaining a sharp edge. "This isn't a discussion, and it certainly isn't optional. For the comfort and security of all our passengers, we need you to move to your correct seat assignment now." She gestured curtly to Kevin. "Help her with her things." Kevin flinched slightly at Jessica's tone, but shuffled forward awkwardly. He reached out a hesitant hand towards Olivia's small purple backpack, resting under the seat, managing to knock over a complimentary bottle of water in the process, which rolled noisily down the aisle. "Oops." "Sorry. He mumbled, his face flushing bright red as he fumbled to retrieve it. Olivia looked around the cabin one last time, her eyes pleading for an ally. A single face that showed kindness or support. She found none. Eyes were averted, fixed on magazines, windows, or the ceiling, anywhere but at her. Even Mrs. Hayes, though Olivia could see the corner of her phone still angled upwards, remained outwardly still, her expression carefully neutral, offering only a silent, pained apology in her gaze. The tears finally broke free, sliding silently down Olivia's hot cheeks. But she wouldn't give them the satisfaction of a scene. With deliberate, measured movements that bespoke a dignity far exceeding her years, she unbuckled her seatbelt, gathered her precious book and sketchbook, and stood up. Her small frame seemed dwarfed by the imposing leather seats and the surrounding adults who had collectively decided she didn't belong. The moment Olivia stepped clear, Eleanor Vance practically vaulted into seat 2A with an exaggerated sigh of profound relief, as though she had just endured a great ordeal rather than orchestrated one. She sank into the cushions. "Ah, much better," she declared loudly to her still engrossed husband. "Finally, some peace and quiet. My nerves were absolutely frayed." Richard grunted non-committally from behind his screen. Kevin, having recovered the water bottle, avoided Olivia's gaze. "This way, please," he muttered, gesturing towards the back of the plane. He led her out of the hushed cocoon of first class, through the slightly less opulent, but still spacious business class section, and into the starkly different reality of economy. The seats were narrower, the aisles tighter, the air thick with the scent of recycled oxygen and stale pretzels. He scanned the crowded rows, finally spotting it. A single undesirable middle seat in row 32, wedged between the sleeping large man, whose arm already encroached generously over the armrest, and the woman furiously typing on her laptop, completely oblivious. "Here we go," Kevin announced with a forced, inappropriate cheerfulness. "A perfect spot for you." He reached up and shoved Olivia's backpack into the overhead bin, several rows behind her seat, effectively putting it out of her reach for the duration of the flight. The message, unspoken but clear, was one of utter dismissal. "You are small. You are inconvenient. You do not matter here." Olivia didn't say a word. She slid past the sleeping man's legs into the cramped middle seat, the rough fabric scratching against her arms. She sat rigidly upright, hands folded tightly in her lap, staring straight ahead at the seat back in front of her. The silent tears continued to flow freely, now tracing pathways down her cheeks in the dim cabin light, each one a testament to the dignity stolen and the injustice served in the uncaring skies. Time aboard flight. 7-5 stretched thin, suspended in the strange limbo of an unexplained delay. In economy, a restless shuffling began, punctuated by impatient sighs and the occasional crying baby. Further forward in the rarefied air of first class, Eleanor Vance seemed oblivious to the mounting tension. Having claimed her prize, she was now holding court, gesturing imperiously for Jessica to refill her champagne flute for the third time. "Honestly," she declared to the cabin, "at large you'd think for the price of these tickets they could at least manage an on-time departure." Jessica complied with a tight, forced smile, her own growing anxiety barely concealed beneath the professional veneer. She kept casting nervous glances towards the front of the plane, wedged into the narrow confines of seat 32B. Olivia Walker felt a different kind of restlessness. The initial shock and humiliation had begun to subside, replaced by a simmering indignation. Her father's words about dignity echoed again, but this time they sparked not just resilience, but resolve. She wouldn't just sit here and cry. She had to do something. Pretending to study the laminated safety card in the seat pocket. Before her, its diagrams of brace positions suddenly seeming woefully inadequate for the current emotional turbulence. Olivia slipped her small hand into her pocket and retrieved her phone, shielding the screen with the safety card. Her fingers flew across the keypad, thumbs clumsy with a mixture of fear and determination. "Dad," she typed, checking frantically over her shoulder. "They made me move from first-class seat 2A. Gave it to a white lady, said, 'I didn't belong, I'm scared, flight SY90275. She hesitated for a second, then added row 32, seat B. She hit send, her heart pounding like a drum against her ribs, praying the message would somehow pierce the metal fuselage and reach him. Unbeknownst to Olivia, several rows ahead, in the quiet calm of seat 3B, another decisive action was taking place. Mrs. Evelyn Hayes, leveraging decades of experience in navigating bureaucratic systems and fighting uphill battles, had found the notoriously unreliable airplane Wi-Fi flickering into life. With calm precision, she addressed an email containing the damning video file to Skyline Airways' dedicated VIP customer relations address, an address she knew well from years of premium travel. Crucially, she also CC'd a personal contact, a sharp, mid-level manager in the operations department she'd once helped with a pro bono case. As a backup, she discreetly pressed the call button when a different flight attendant appeared, not Jessica or Kevin. Mrs. Hayes spoke quietly, but firmly, requesting to speak urgently with the chief purser regarding a serious breach of conduct involving an unaccompanied minor in first class, mentioning she possessed video evidence. The digital and human messages, sent from different parts of the aircraft but fueled by the same sense of injustice, began their invisible journey. Miles below, in a sleek Chicago boardroom, David Walker's phone vibrated silently on the polished table during a presentation on quarterly fuel cost projections. A glance at the screen sent a jolt through him. Olivia scared seat 2A. The carefully constructed calm of the CEO vanished, replaced instantly by the primal instinct of a protective father. Excusing himself abruptly, leaving his stunned executives mid-sentence, he stepped out and made a single urgent call. Simultaneously, Mrs. Hayes's email pinged in a high-priority inbox, flagged by keywords like discrimination, video evidence, and unaccompanied minor. Coupled with the urgent report now relayed by the chief purser, who had spoken with Mrs. Hayes, the airline's internal alert system lit up like a Christmas tree. Within minutes, Jennifer Foster, the airline's formidable vice president of customer experience, known for her icy efficiency and unwavering adherence to protocol, was striding purposefully towards the departure gate, her expression grim. Back on the plane, the main cabin door suddenly hissed open again, causing a collective intake of breath. All eyes turned as Jennifer Foster stepped aboard her tailored navy suit, radiating authority. Beside her stood the chief purser, his face a mask of professional gravity. A palpable tension instantly replaced the restless boredom in the cabin. "Ladies and gentlemen, may I have your attention?" Jennifer's voice cut through the murmur, calm but commanding, requiring no PA system. "I apologize for the continued delay. We are addressing a serious onboard situation that requires immediate resolution." From seat 2A, Eleanor Vance rolled her eyes dramatically. "Finally, someone in charge. Can you please tell the captain to get this bird in the air? Some of us have actual commitments." Jennifer Foster didn't even spare Eleanor a glance. Her gaze swept the first-class cabin, coolly assessing Chief Purser. She instructed, "Please locate passenger Olivia Walker and escort her to the front of the cabin." In the galley, Jessica gasped audibly. Kevin seemed to shrink several inches. A moment later, the Chief Purser was walking down the narrow economy aisle. He stopped at row 32. "Miss Olivia Walker." He asked, his voice respectful. A stark contrast to Kevin's earlier tone. "Would you please come with me?" Olivia looked up, startled and wary. Passengers in economy craned their necks, whispering as the small girl was personally escorted towards the front. As she walked past the staring faces through business class and back into the first-class cabin where her ordeal began, the entire aircraft seemed to hold its breath. Jennifer waited, her expression unreadable. As Olivia reached her side, Jennifer turned her attention squarely to Eleanor Vance, still lounging in seat 2A. Eleanor froze mid-complaint, seeing Olivia reappear with what was clearly an executive escort. "What is the meaning of this?" Eleanor demanded, her voice rising slightly. "We are being held hostage here." Mrs. Vance, Jennifer stated, her tone dropping several degrees colder. "May I see your boarding pass, please?" "This is preposterous," Eleanor spluttered, but she fumbled in her handbag, eventually producing her ticket holder with a flourish. "Here's seat 2A." Jennifer took the document, glanced at it briefly, then met Eleanor's defiant gaze. "This boarding pass is for seat 4C, Mrs. Vance Business Class." Furthermore, she added, her eyes flicking momentarily towards Mrs. Hayes, who met her gaze steadily. "We have received credible evidence, including video documentation, indicating you improperly obtained access to seat 2A through illicit means. After this young lady, the rightful ticket holder was wrongfully removed." The color drained from Eleanor's face. She opened and closed her mouth, resembling a startled fish. Across the aisle, the man in 1C suddenly became intensely fascinated by a loose thread on his trousers, The woman who had nodded agreement earlier was now diligently studying the clouds outside her window, as if expecting divine intervention. The collective confidence of the first-class objectors evaporated into thin air. Before Eleanor could formulate a coherent protest, the PA system crackled to life. It was the voice of Captain Miller. "Ladies and gentlemen, your attention, please. Due to the serious nature of the situation on board, I have been instructed to connect you directly to the Chief Executive Officer of Skyline Airways, Mr. David Walker, who wishes to address all passengers." A collective gasp went through the cabin, the CEO addressing them directly. This wasn't just irregular. This was unprecedented. The air crackled with anticipation, thick enough to cut with a knife. Olivia stood straighter, her small hand instinctively reaching out perhaps for the reassurance of the VP standing beside her before pulling it back. Her heart pounded, not just with fear, now but with a dawning, tremulous hope. The crackle of the PA system seemed abnormally loud in the pin-drop silence of the aircraft cabin. Every eye was fixed on the overhead speakers, as if expecting the disembodied voice of judgment itself. Then it came, smooth, measured, devoid of overt anger, but resonating with an unmistakable steely authority that commanded instant attention. "Good afternoon, passengers of Flight 2275. This is David Walker, CEO of Skyline Airways." A collective audible gasp rippled through first-class heads, swiveled towards Olivia, standing small but resolute beside the imposing figure of Jennifer Foster. Olivia's own eyes widened slightly. Hearing her father's voice fill the plane was surreal. David Walker continued his tone level. "It has come to my direct attention through multiple credible reports, including irrefutable video evidence provided by a concerned passenger and a distress message from my own daughter, that a series of deeply unacceptable events has occurred on this aircraft prior to departure." Another wave of murmurs swept the cabin, quickly hushed by the gravity in his voice. Specifically, David stated each word carefully enunciated. A young passenger traveling alone was wrongfully removed from her assigned first-class seat 2A. This removal was facilitated by crew members who disregarded verified ticketing information and accepted a bribe from another passenger seeking to occupy that seat. He paused, letting the weight of the accusation settle. Furthermore, this passenger, my 8-year-old daughter, Olivia Walker, the name hung in the air confirming the unspoken speculation, was subjected to discriminatory treatment and relocated to an inappropriate seat in a different cabin. The silence now was absolute, broken only by the low hum of the ventilation system. You could practically hear jaws dropping. Eleanor Vance's face had gone from shock to a pasty white. Jessica looked physically ill, swaying slightly on her feet. At Skyline Airways, David Walker's voice hardened almost imperceptibly. "We have a zero-tolerance policy for discrimination in any form, be it based on race, age, or any other factor. We have a zero-tolerance policy for crew members accepting bribes or gratuities in exchange for preferential treatment or the violation of company procedures. And we have a zero-tolerance policy for any behavior that compromises the safety, dignity, and well-being of our passengers, especially our youngest ones." His next words landed like hammer blows. "Effective immediately. Flight attendant Jessica Miller is terminated from her employment with Skyline Airways for accepting a bribe and dereliction of duty." Jessica let out a small, strangled cry. "Flight attendant Kevin White." David continued, "is terminated from his employment for complicity in violating company policy and passenger mistreatment." Somewhere near the back galley, a muffled sob could be heard. And Mrs. Eleanor Vance, the name spoken with icy precision, the passenger currently occupying seat 2A without a valid ticket, who initiated the bribe and instigated this entire reprehensible incident. You are hereby instructed to gather your belongings and deplane immediately. Your actions are incompatible with the standards of conduct we expect on our airline. Consequently, you are permanently banned from all future travel on Skyline Airways and our partner carriers. Any existing loyalty status or accrued miles are forfeited. Skyline Airways will fully cooperate with any subsequent inquiries from relevant authorities regarding your conduct today, right on cue, as if summoned by David Walker's very words. 2 uniformed airport security officers appeared at the front of the first-class cabin, their expressions impassive, their presence undeniable. They positioned themselves, flanking the aisle near seat 2A. Eleanor Vance finally snapped out of her stupor, leaping to her feet. "This is outrageous! Preposterous!" She shrieked, her voice cracking. "You can't do this to me! Do you have any idea who my husband is?" "Richard." Tell them. All eyes swiveled to Richard. "Vance." He looked up from his phone, blinked owlishly at the security officers, then at his hysterical wife, then back at his phone, as if checking if this situation was somehow listed on the stock exchange. He offered only a confused shrug. Jennifer Foster stepped forward, calmly. "Mrs. Vance," she said, her voice cutting through Eleanor's tirade, "please refrain from causing further disturbance. As mentioned, we have clear video evidence of the transaction with the flight attendant. Your options are to leave voluntarily now, or be forcibly removed. The choice is yours, but you will be leaving this aircraft." Eleanor looked wildly around the cabin, her eyes darting from face to face, searching desperately for the support that had been so readily available just minutes before. She found nothing but averted gazes and stony silence. The man in 1CO was now examining his cuticles with profound interest. The woman across the aisle appeared to be counting the stitches on her headrest. Even her own husband offered no assistance. Defeated, sputtering incoherently about lawyers and lawsuits, Eleanor snatched her designer handbag. With a final venomous glare at Olivia, she allowed the security officers to escort her down the aisle and off the jet bridge. Her carefully constructed world crumbling around her in front of dozens of silent witnesses. Jessica was next. Another airline official, seemingly appearing out of nowhere, quietly asked for her crew, ID and wing pin, before escorting her away, her face pale and tear-streaked, her career vanishing before her eyes. Kevin proved slightly more elusive. A brief search located him, attempting to blend in with the beverage carts in the rear galley. Looking utterly ashamed, he was marched forward by the chief purser, avoiding eye contact as he passed the rows of passengers, his youthful face a mask of misery. The swift, decisive, and very public nature of the consequences was stunning. Just as the last of the disgraced trio disappeared, a new flight crew, crisp, professional, and clearly briefed, boarded the aircraft seamlessly, their expressions conveying quiet determination. The PA system clicked on one last time. David Walker's voice returned, softer now. "To my daughter, Olivia, I am so proud of your strength and composure today. I love you, Butterfly. I'll see you in Chicago." Then, addressing the cabin, "To all our passengers, I sincerely apologize for the significant delay and the distress caused by this incident. Your safety and comfort remain our highest priority. We expect to be underway shortly. Thank you for your patience and for choosing Skyline Airways." The PA clicked off, leaving a cabin filled with a strange mix of residual shock, quiet approval, and perhaps a touch of collective embarrassment. The new purser approached Olivia and Jennifer Foster. "Miss Walker," the purser said, his voice warm and respectful, "your seat 2A is ready for you whenever you wish." Jennifer Foster gave Olivia's shoulder a gentle, reassuring squeeze. Olivia took a deep breath, nodded silently, and walked the few steps back to the window seat that was rightfully hers. As she settled in, the silence from the other first-class passengers was profound. No longer the silence of complicity, but the awkward, respectful silence of witnessed accountability. It wasn't comfortable, but it was undeniably just. The rest of the flight passed in an atmosphere thick with unspoken thoughts. The tension hadn't entirely vanished, but it had transformed into a heavy, reflective quietude. Back in her rightful seat, Otue Olivia Walker finally allowed her shoulders to relax, the rigid posture of self-defense melting away. She felt drained, yet strangely calm. Beside her, having quietly requested a seat change from the new purser, to be near Olivia sat Mrs. Evelyn Hayes. She reached over and gently patted Olivia's hand, her touch warm and reassuring. "You did wonderfully, child," she said softly, her eyes kind. "You held on to your dignity, like the precious jewel it is. Never let anyone, no matter how loud or important they seem, diminish that sparkle within you. Your voice, even when it trembles, has power." She smiled, a hint of old fire in her eyes. "Reminds me of marching in '65. Different situation. Same old foolishness we had to stand up against." As the flight progressed, a slow, awkward parade of penance began. The balding man from 1C approached, first clearing his throat nervously. Miss Walker," he stammered, avoiding direct eye contact. "I just wanted to sincerely apologize for my earlier remarks. And for not speaking up. It was wrong." Olivia looked up at him, her gaze steady and far older than her 8 years. She remembered her father's advice, but also Mrs. Hayes's quiet strength beside her. "Thank you for saying that now, sir," she replied, her voice clear and polite, yet firm. "But I hope next time, if you see someone being treated unfairly, you'll speak up sooner. Not just for me, but for anyone who needs an ally." The man flushed, nodded quickly, and retreated to his seat, looking thoroughly chastened. Others followed with similarly awkward gestures. A woman offered Olivia a slightly crushed fashion magazine. Another man awkwardly presented half of a dry-looking energy bar from his briefcase. Muttering something about not being hungry, Olivia accepted each offering with quiet grace, her simple thank you carrying an unspoken weight that resonated more than any rebuke. Later, with special permission relayed from the cockpit, Olivia's tablet chimed with an incoming video call. Her father's face filled the screen, etched with relief, but still showing traces of the fierce anger she'd heard in his voice earlier. "Hey, Butterfly David," Walker said softly. "How are you really doing?" Olivia managed a small smile. "I'm okay now, Dad." "A little shaky, but okay. Mrs. Hayes has been really nice. I'm glad," he sighed. "Olivia, I am so incredibly proud of you. You were poised, you were brave, you remembered everything I taught you." He paused, his expression serious. "But you should never have had to be that brave, just to sit in a seat you paid for, Dad." Olivia asked the question that had been forming in her mind, finally surfacing. If I wasn't your daughter, would you still have done all that? Would you have spoken on the PA and everything?" David met her gaze directly through the screen, his honesty unwavering. "That's a fair question, Butterfly, and the honest answer is, I don't know for sure if I would have acted exactly the same way, quite so fast. Loving you makes the injustice feel sharper, more urgent." It lit a fire under me. He leaned closer to the camera. "But seeing what happened to you, someone I love, made me realize more fiercely than ever that I have to build a company where no one daughter or not ever feels what you felt today." That's why his voice, filled with renewed determination, we launched the Dignity Initiative the moment I got off that PA system. He explained the comprehensive plan, mandatory new training for all staff on recognizing and combating unconscious bias, clear protocols for reporting and escalating incidents, and the creation of a new independent passenger advocate role at major hubs specifically tasked with protecting passenger rights, especially for vulnerable travelers like children flying alone. Your experience, Olivia, he said gently, as awful as it was, is going to make things safer and better for thousands of other people. That's how change happens. Sometimes it starts with one painful story. He even managed a small, wry smile. Though I'll admit, managing airline fuel costs is occasionally less stressful than worrying about my daughter navigating first class. The plane finally began its smooth descent into Chicago O'Hare. As they taxied to the gate, a quiet understanding seemed to settle over the first-class cabin. When the seatbelt sign dinged off, passengers remained seated, a silent collective gesture, allowing Olivia and Mrs. Hayes to gather their belongings and exit first. Walking up the jet bridge, Olivia saw him immediately. Her father standing tall and waiting just beyond the gate, his eyes scanning the disembarking passengers. He wasn't flanked by assistants or security, just a father waiting for his child. Seeing him, Olivia's carefully maintained composure finally crumbled. She dropped her backpack and ran the last few feet, launching herself into his open arms. David held her tight, murmuring words of love and pride into her hair, simply letting her feel safe. After a long moment, he stood, keeping an arm around Olivia's shoulders. He turned warmly to Mrs. Hayes as she approached. Mrs. Hayes. "I'm David Walker. I understand I owe you a significant debt of gratitude, Evelyn Hayes," she replied, shaking his offered hand firmly. "No debt at all, Mr. Walker. Just doing what needed to be done. Your daughter is remarkable." "Thank you, Evelyn," David said sincerely. "Actually, I was hoping, given your background and obvious passion for justice, perhaps you'd consider becoming an honorary advisor to our new Dignity Initiative." Mrs. Hayes smiled broadly. "Mr. Walker," she said, "I believe I would be honored." Months later, sunlight streamed into a modern conference room at Skyline Airways headquarters. Around a large table sat a diverse group airline executives, child psychology experts, flight crew representatives, Mrs. Evelyn Hayes, and the newly formed Youth Advisory Council. At the head of the table, beside a whiteboard covered in colorful drawings and diagrams, stood Olivia Walker, now looking perhaps a touch taller, but still radiating the same quiet confidence. She addressed the room. And so she concluded, pointing to a drawing of a friendly-looking airport map with designated safe zones, marked, "If kids traveling alone know exactly where to find a certified passenger advocate. Someone specifically trained to help them before a problem gets big, they'll feel safer." And maybe, she added, looking directly at the executives, "we need simpler ways for kids to report feeling uncomfortable. Maybe like a special button on the screen or a card they can show." The executives listened intently, nodding and taking notes. One senior VP, known for his tough negotiating skills, looked down at his notepad, seemingly slightly intimidated by the clarity and conviction of the 8-year-old, calmly redesigning his airline's passenger experience. At the back of the room, David Walker stood beside Mrs. Hayes, watching his daughter not just overcome adversity, but actively transform it into positive action. He caught Olivia's eye and gave her a proud, almost imperceptible nod. Olivia smiled back, then turned to shake hands formally with the VP beside her, ready to discuss her next point. The journey that began with tears of humiliation on Flight 22705 had led her here. No longer just a passenger, but a catalyst, helping chart a course towards a kinder, more dignified sky for everyone. Wow, what a journey! Olivia Walker took us on. It started with a moment of painful injustice, a feeling perhaps many of us recognize. That feeling of being unseen, unheard, or told. We don't belong simply because of who we are. But didn't her story blossom into something powerful? It truly makes you wonder, how often do we underestimate the strength found in quiet dignity, or the incredible ripple effect one single voice can have when it dares to demand respect? Olivia didn't just reclaim her seat. She helped spark a change for countless others. This story truly resonated with us, reminding us that courage can bloom in the most challenging circumstances, and that sometimes the most important journeys begin when we stand our ground. We'd love to hear how it resonated with you. What part of Olivia's transformation, from feeling powerless in that economy seat to confidently presenting her ideas for change in that final scene, inspired you the most? Share your deepest thoughts in the comments below. Let's discuss the power of finding your voice. And speaking of making things better, your feedback is incredibly valuable to us. We genuinely want to create stories that connect and inspire. If you have any suggestions on how we could improve our storytelling, specific moments you loved or wished were different, or even ideas for future stories you'd like to see explored, please let us know in the comments. We read every single one and are always striving to bring you more impactful narratives based on what you want to see and hear. Your input helps us grow and improve with every story we tell. If Olivia's journey touched your heart or made you think about the importance of dignity and speaking up, please give this video a like. It truly helps others find these stories, and consider sharing it with someone who might find strength or validation in her experience today. To join us for more stories that explore courage, justice, and the power of the human spirit to create change, please hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell so you won't miss our next journey together. Thank you so much for watching, for listening, and for being part of this important conversation. Until next time, take care and stand tall.